So I want to start reviewing video games on my channel, and the game that I want to start with is the game that I most recently played, which is The Last of Us Part 2. I know that a lot of people don't like the game, and there have been negative reviews, and I respect that. I can understand where that comes from. I can understand what people don't like about the game. While I was playing the game, I witnessed things that frustrated me, and so on and so forth. But my personal review of The Last of Us 2 is a positive one. And I guess I want to start by talking about the previous game as well. And this is going to be full of spoilers. So if you haven't played The Last of Us 1 or The Last of Us 2, I recommend you stop this video right now, go and get those games and play them. Well, play The Last of Us 1, and I think you should play The Last of Us 2. I think everyone is in agreement that you should play The Last of Us 1. I think you should play The Last of Us 2. If you like my content, I think you would like the game. Assuming that you like this kind of game. So, your own what's the phrase? Caveat emptor, right? Anyway, I really enjoyed The Last of Us 1. I think that's very straightforward. Like, practically everybody who plays it loves it. It's about, it's set in an apocalyptic, post-zombie apocalypse scenario. And it's people say that it's a story about Joel and Ellie, the main characters of the game. But, I have a tweet that goes something like, it's early in the game. So, okay, the start of the game is, with you playing as Joel's daughter, Sarah. And then, Sarah gets killed not by a zombie, but by an infected, but by a soldier who was instructed to kill the human survivors, just to kind of contain the virus, right? And Sarah is killed by a soldier, which is a very telling choice, I think, because the point is, and I tweeted about this, which is to say that what is terrifying about a zombie apocalypse is not the zombies themselves, but what we do to each other when there are zombies at the gate. And so I took an in-game screenshot where, still in the early part of the game, where Joel is kind of walking around his starting area, right, which is in the kind of like a quarantine zone, a QZ, I think they call it, or whatever. And there are militarized police or soldiers or whatever who are dead. They're hanging. They've been hung. And then there's like painting. There's like graffiti behind them saying, 3 dead. How much more will it take? Like, give up or something. So there is, in The Last of Us, there is this setting. There's this sense of, here we have people just trying to survive, right? And in these difficult situations where food is scarce, and so there are ration cards and stuff like that, and people feel that the authorities are being unjust, and so they organize themselves into militias or whatever, the Fireflies, and they kill soldiers, to prove a point. And like, that's just the crazy environment that they live in. And the game continues, and you can see in The Last of Us, the first game, you can see snippets of the broader world that the game creators are trying to show you. So at some point, Joel and Ellie bump into another pair, right? Of I can't remember the names of the characters, but like, it's the two black guys, the guy and his younger brother who's a kid, who's around Ellie's age. And you can see that, they're obviously the same kind of age difference. They are meant to be kind of like a parallel pair of characters for you to see that, oh, here's another two people going through what these two people are going through, right? And the younger boy gets infected. He has to be killed, and then the older brother kills himself because he couldn't save his brother. And that's fucked up, right? It's horrifying to see. The whole of The Last of Us is, seriously, it's painful to play. It's frustrating. It's unpleasant. But like, it's gripping storytelling. It's really, you really feel what the fuck is going on. Like you'll keep saying what the fuck, when Joel starts out He's with Tess, his partner, his like business partner / maybe they have some romantic relation in the background in the past, whatever. And they're like friends. She's helping you out, you're helping her out, you're working together, you're progressing in the game. And then at some point Tess gets bitten by an infected, and she dies. She doesn't die, she doesn't turn, right? She dies trying to buy you some time to get away with Ellie. And Ellie is the cargo that you're supposed to transport to the Fireflies for money or whatever, right? And she's the cargo because she has immunity to the disease, to being infected, so she doesn't turn. And the hope is that by getting Ellie to the surgeon people, right, that they can use her to create a vaccine, right, and potentially protect humans everywhere from falling to the infected disease, and have a renaissance of human flourishing, right? And along the way, you bump into fellow travelers who kill themselves. At some point, Joel gets injured falling off a height he gets impaled, which is and then Ellie has to take over a little bit, and Ellie, and then so skipping that stuff, the details not that important. At some point along the way you encounter different groups of people who are trying to survive, and at some point as you're driving you get kind of you get ambushed by people who are gonna kill you, because that's what they do to survive. They ambush passing travelers and kill them and take their stuff, right? And you see that's how some people live. And later on, when you meet David and his crew, right, and David's voiced by Nolan North, who's the hero of the Uncharted series. But when you meet David and his crew, like you hear other people mention that, and you find out that they were friends with the people that Ellie and Joel had killed along the way, right? They had to kill a lot of people just to survive, to get through these harrowing situations. And you get a sense that, to these people, Ellie and Joel aren't, the protagonists, right? They're just two strangers who've been killing their friends, and they would want vengeance, right? Like, so all of those things are a part of the original story of The Last of Us, which I described as, again, worse than the zombies at the gates are what we do to each other when there are zombies at the gates. So that was kind of the background of how I saw The Last of Us. Like, it's a story about, and the game is named The Last of Us, right? It isn't named Joel and Ellie. It's named The Last of Us, meaning the last humans on Earth during a zombie apocalypse, right? And what do The Last of Us do? And so I think some people saw that game and they played as Joel the whole time, and they felt strongly for Ellie the whole time, and they felt that the game is about Joel and Ellie, which I believe is not what the game makers intended. Like, yeah, they told the story through Ellie and Joel and they are the main characters, but that's not the point, right? And this is explored in The Last of Us 2. They have more resources, they have a broader scope. They've already told the story of Ellie and Joel, and they want to tell a bigger, wider story. And there are a bunch of things that they could have done better. So in the trailer, at the end of the trailer, there's a part where Joel covers Ellie's face with his hand to tell her that he's gonna, he says, "Do you think I'll let you do this on your own?" And that was a fake, because in The Last of Us 2, spoilers, at that point Joel's already dead, and it's actually Jesse, who's a new character who is Ellie's partner at that point. And so I can see how gamers might feel betrayed by that. Like, they felt that they were promised that they were gonna get to play as Joel or get to play as Ellie with Joel, and that was taken from them. And that I can understand why you might feel angry about that. Although, at a meta level, you could say that that's kind of like the theme of the game, right? Like The Last of Us, like as a whole, which is that loss is real. Bad shit happens. People die. And the decision to kill Joel was something that I'm very sure they thought very, very hard about. And, like they didn't take it lightly. Like, it's kind of like killing Ned Stark or killing Tony Stark, right? It's not something like people love the character very much, but the death serves a purpose, right? And Joel did kill the Doctor at the end of The Last of Us 1, and the Doctor was supposed to, to get the vaccine, Ellie would have to die, and the Doctor was gonna kill Ellie to get the vaccine, and he was, in The Last of Us 2 we learn more about this Doctor. This Doctor is Abby's father, Abby being the character that is very polarizing for a lot of people who hate her because they feel that she is, the villain. So there are layers to why people dislike Abby, right? And I wouldn't say that. Do I like Abby? I'm not a fan. Like I don't love Abby as a character, but I respect it. I respect the choice that the game makers make. I when I play a game or I read a book or I watch a movie, I try to work with. I see myself as an active participant in figuring out the meaning, right? I find myself working with the directors and with the cast and whatever to construct meaning, to understand what they're trying to tell me and to try and get value out of it. And I guess this is where I might be different than a lot of consumers who are a bit more passive, maybe, who just kind of want a good time, they want a story that feels good, right? Or just more broadly. And they don't want to be challenged too much in an overly dissonant way. And I do feel this way about like some jazz music. Like I'm a musician, and there's some jazz music that I can't really appreciate because I feel like they deviate too far from melody and they go into like these dissonant, weird, strange spaces. Like I was listening to Bitches Brew by Miles Davis, and it's very unsettling. And but I can sense that there's artistry there. And if you want to argue that The Last of Us 2 does not have the artistry of, Miles Davis, right? Like they attempted something dissonant. If your argument is that they attempted something dissonant and they didn't stick the landing, I'm sympathetic to that argument. I feel like, so I do recall that, when so in the game you play as Ellie for like 4 days worth of time, and then there's a confrontation between Ellie and Abby, and then you play as Abby, and then you start playing as Abby, and if it's your first time playing through the game, as it was mine, I found myself thinking like, but what's going on with Ellie? Like, I am attached to this character that I've been playing as for so long and was from the first game, and like I did feel like the game spent a lot of time having me play as Abby, which I didn't really want to be doing. So I do think that there are some editing issues in a way. Like they made too much game, maybe there's too much Abby, maybe. But I see what they were trying to do, and I can respect that. And I can respect if you don't respect that, But they were trying to tell a story about The Last of Us. They were trying to tell us a story about the Washington Liberation Front, right? The wolves. They were trying to tell a story about the Seraphites, right? And it was interesting to see, how the WLF operates, how Isaac is this shadowy figure who's like a leader, and then Isaac dies like in an accident, which happens, right? Leaders of cults and whatnot do sometimes just die in a freaky shootout, right? Abby is saved by Lev and Yara. That can happen, right? And she has this kind of conversion moment where she decides that she cares more about Lev and Yara than she does about like the crew that she was with. That's possible. Like, it's not like a lot of the things that people say are kind of unrealistic or whatnot about the game. I actually think, I have my disagreements about that. I feel like the overall emotional journeys of Ellie and Abby and Joel and Lev, I feel like all of those things are actually very well done. And I think some people who may not have experience or familiarity with media of people who've been through that kind of traumatic event, I can understand why that might not be clear to them. And so in that sense, The Last of Us is Last of Us 2 is a really ambitious piece of work. It's a really audacious piece of work, right? And they tried to do something that I'm not sure has been done well in gaming, and I feel like they did a pretty good job. I would say they did like a, in the game could have been like, I would say in terms of what they shipped, like clearly they didn't ship a perfect game. Like I'm sure there was like a, there was crunch time and they had staffing issues and they had to rush some stuff and whatnot. I mean, the gameplay is beautiful. The environments are gorgeous. The even like when Ellie or Abby are modifying their weapons, it's so real and correct and so immersive. The atmospheres, when you are on the Seraphite Island and it's burning, like wow, that's amazing. It's all these beautiful set pieces, beautiful animations. It's a beautiful game, like visually and experientially, right? And so I'm pretty sure nobody criticizes it on that front. So the criticisms are more like, so I remember thinking when we were at the point where after, some people say things like, why would Abby want to kill Dina and then not do it? But that makes sense to me. It's like in that moment of bloodlust, she wants to, like, vengeance and bloodlust, she's willing to kill a pregnant woman in an eye for an eye kind of situation, because like Ellie had killed her pregnant friend, right? But then Lev calls to her and pulls her out of her vengeance and bloodlust. So as a whole, The Last of Us 2 is a story about vengeance and retribution and the cycle of violence, right? Joel lost his daughter to fucked up circumstances, and that made him not want to lose Ellie. And so Joel was willing to do horrific shit to other people to protect Ellie, right? And that included killing Abby's father. From Abby's point of view, her father didn't do anything wrong. Her father was a lovely man who tried to, be nice to animals and was willing to do whatever he had to do for the greater good. And I think, if I remember correctly, she said something like, if it was me who had to die to save the world, I would want you to do it, right? If I remember correctly, I'm not sure. But like, from Ellie's point of view, some fucker murdered her dad, right? And so she became hell-bent on vengeance, which is an understandable motivation. Like, if you didn't know about Ellie and you didn't know about Joel, all you knew was that from the start of the game. So what might be interesting would be to get someone who doesn't know The Last of Us 1 and who kind of gets dropped into Abby's story. If you're dropped into Abby's story, she starts out with, a great relationship with her dad, and then her dad gets killed by some monster whose name is Joel, and then she wants vengeance and she wants to kill Joel. It's understandable. We don't condone it, right? We don't encourage it, but it's understandable why somebody would do that, right? And a person, not a monster, right? Like, she's just, in her grief and rage, she wanted to kill the person who killed her father, and she did. And we saw it happen, and we saw how it played out. And, I'm thinking about how I was rewatching some bits from other people's playthroughs, and there's this point where when Abby gets captured by the Rattlers, and she's on the ground and they are pressing her down and they are trying to, and like another one of them is manhandling Lev, she feels about Lev the way Abby felt about Joel, right? It's very clear that the parallel in that scene is very clear. But anyway, like, zooming back, when Dina, when Abby spared Dina, and she spared Ellie, so Abby spared both Dina and Ellie, and I mean, she shot Tommy. It's unclear whether she wanted vengeance. So Tommy killed her friend, right? I forgot his name. It's like a Hispanic name, right? I think so. Manny, yes. So Tommy killed Manny, shot him right through the face. And Abby, I'm not sure if Abby knew for sure that Tommy was the one who killed, that the guy in that room was the same Tommy that killed her friend Manny. But, she shot him kind of she showed restraint. Abby showed restraint in that theater scene, right? She shot Jesse kind of in a startling moment and just died on the spot like that, which is a shocker. And she, wasn't immediately gonna kill Tommy or shoot to kill Tommy until he kind of turned back. And just all Abby wanted was vengeance for her dad, right, initially. And she got it by killing Joel. But then she set off this cycle of now Ellie wants vengeance for Joel, right? And when she beat Ellie and Dina, right? And then she left them to say, don't let me see you again. Like, she was, in a sense, forgiving Ellie. Well, she's making a decision to say, like, let's end this here. Let's move on with our lives. Like, you fuck off, I'm gonna fuck off. Let's be done with this, right? Like, a lot of blood has been shed. Let's end it here. And this parallel plays out. If you see the WLF and the Seraphites, they attempted to have a peace agreement. There's like a negotiation, and both sides felt that the other side had violated that agreement, right? And so there's this theme that runs through the game at multiple layers, right? At the Ellie and Abby layer, but also at the WLF and Seraphite layer, right? Which is two communities that don't trust each other, that actually want peace, but they can't seem to broker the peace, and the peace is short-lived, and to the point where the WLF feels that total annihilation of the Seraphites is the only thing that's possible, that can end it. And then the game shows you that happening. There's an invasion and there's fire. They burn the whole fucking town down, and it's a horrifying scene. As you see it, you see the WLF people dying, you see the Seraphites dying. It's just bloodlust and rage and murder and death, and it's not beautiful. It's not, it's not glorious like it would be in a Call of Duty game or something. I mean, okay, I haven't played the Call of Duty game, so I don't know how they handle the treatment of war, but you see that people getting killed is not pretty. It's not glamorous. It's fucked up, right? People dying, and there's towns and cities burning, right? And you see that play out. You see Abby and Lev struggle to escape, and yeah, man, that was just a big, moving, painful thing to witness. And Abby might have left Ellie alone if Ellie had not subsequently killed Abby's friends, right? So, but Ellie is willing to do whatever. So that's the problem of vengeance and vengefulness, right? And what happens next? Ellie is given a happy ending in the middle, in like the 2/3 mark of the game, right? Ellie and Dina are on a farm. Ellie's playing with the baby JJ, and it's nice. You see her show. I remember at one point earlier in the game, if you're Ellie and you walk into a mirror, she's just staring at the mirror, kind of blurry, and she doesn't do anything. And if you've played Uncharted 4, so spoilers for Uncharted 4's ending. If you've played Uncharted 4, at the end of the game, like the epilogue, you play as Nathan's daughter, and she's walking around and she looks in the mirror and she acknowledges herself. If you're playing as Nathan, you walk into a mirror and he's like, hey, he pretends that he styles his hair and he points at the mirror. So you get the sense that the characters in Naughty Dog games interact with mirrors. But Ellie doesn't. Ellie's just kind of staring at the mirror, kind of gruffly and whatnot. But later, when you're an Ellie and you're playing and you're carrying the baby, JJ, and you bring him to the mirror, she's like playing with him in the mirror. She's like being a mom, right? She's being a nourishing presence, right? And she's dancing with Dina, and it's happy and it's nice and everything's beautiful. And then when Ellie goes into the barn, I sat on the tractor with the baby for like 5 minutes, just enjoying the sunset, feeling the positive vibes and being like, you know what, if this is the end, I'm okay with it. We've done what you've done and whatnot. But then Ellie goes into the barn and she has like a PTSD flashback of Joel, and it's horrifying and scary, and you see her freaking out physically. And Ellie is then convinced that she needs to go on and continue her vengeance. And I don't know what that feels like. I have never lost a loved one like that. and I've never seen the horror of that. So I don't know what it feels like to be that way, but I can imagine that it would have felt like it was beyond her conscious control. It would have felt like something that she could not have done anything about. And you see poor Dina trying to persuade Ellie not to go, saying that I can't wait for you anymore. I can't, which makes sense because, how do you build a life with such a volatile agent like Ellie? And it's not Ellie's fault, but the volatility is in her. And so Ellie pursues her vengeance and she tracks down Abby. And I really like how that final third act with the Rattlers is so disjointed and crazy. Like, again, that's how life is. Like, they don't get to have this super elegant face-to-face kind of thing. Like, just they are external. The world's going on, right, the whole time. Things are always happening. And so the Rattlers don't care about Ellie or Abby or their feud, right? They're just a bunch of psychos who want slaves and whatnot. And they're doing it. And, Abby gets trapped and Ellie gets caught, but she breaks out. And by the time you encounter Abby is freaking exhausted. She's been through hell, and we don't even know exactly what she's been through, but it's implied to be really horrifying. And she's skinny and just exhausted, close to death. And so is Ellie. She's been bleeding out from the way she's been stabbed in the stomach by that tree branch, and she had to stitch it up herself. And she's just like shit, right? And they have that fight, and Abby bites Ellie's fingers off. But like Ellie is given the opportunity to kill Abby effectively. And even before that, so Ellie goes to Lev, who's like unconscious on the boat, and well, first of all, Ellie frees Abby, right? Which is, is that a compassionate act? I don't know. You can see Ellie is kind of fucked up already, and she feels like she needs to have that fight with Abby in some sense, right? So she frees Abby, and then Abby wants to go. Abby says, I don't want to fight you. And then Ellie puts a knife to Lev's neck. And now Lev is this innocent character that hasn't done anything to Ellie, but it's the nature of vengeance, right? You took something from me that I love. I'm gonna take something from you that you love, and I want to fight you about this. Let's fight, right? And so they fight. And when Ellie is close to killing Abby, she gets a flash vision of Joel, and she realizes that kind of he would not want her to do this. I think that's the sense that the game kind of wants to tell you. And I could see it happening. I could see that Ellie has a moment of clarity about what she wants and what she doesn't want, and what vengeance achieves and what it doesn't achieve, and how if she kills Abby now, she will also have to kill Lev, because if she doesn't kill Lev, then Lev might seek vengeance against her, right? So Ellie forgives Abby in a sense and lets her go, and the cycle of violence ends with them. The cycle of vengeance ends with them. And I think that's a very beautiful message for the game to choose to end on. And none of this is happening in a vacuum, right? We're watching a game, we're playing a game, but we live in the real world where there isn't a zombie apocalypse going on right now. But cycles of vengeance are real. Cycles of retribution are real. Like, people do, communities do have back and forth cycles of hate. Left versus right, black versus white. The stuff going on in the Middle East. There's always something going on in the Middle East. But a sectarian conflict in different parts of different countries all over the world. We as a species have inherited violence, cycles of violence, vengeance, retribution, hatred, right? Justified hatred, potentially, right? And I think it's important and beautiful to have media meaning art, right? Games, movies, TV, whatever, that help us come to a point of common knowledge about the futility of retribution and the necessity of forgiveness and redemption, right? I wouldn't say it's a perfect game. I think they were ambitious and they were trying to do something great, and it requires some effort on the part of the gamer to read that into the art, right? Some people will say things like the fact that Ellie and Dina are lesbians. That's some kind of, I don't know what do you call it. It's like a tokenism, maybe. The fact that Lev is trans, that might be tokenism. But I don't think those things are gonna matter. Like in the long run, like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, people are not gonna care so much about how that was tokenism or some kind of insert. I feel like they were real characters, and they were characters with real feelings and emotions and real concerns, and that's what I care about, And I'm glad this game was made. I'm glad I played it. It was painful and difficult to play. I anticipate that I will play it again. I anticipate that it will again break my heart in several points, and I will probably notice a bunch of things that I didn't notice the first time around. It's horrible how some people have directed abuse at the voice actors. Even like people were sending death threats to the voice actress who played Abby, which is fucked up. Like even if you don't like Abby the character, sending death threats to a person who was involved in the making of a game about the futility of violence, that's really something. It would be funny if it wasn't dark, but I enjoyed The Last of Us 2, 1 and 2. Am I hoping for a 3? I don't know if Ellie's story is gonna continue. I don't know if they'll want to. Would you want to do a story about like Lev? Maybe. I don't know. I guess time will have to pass and they will have to figure that out. But regardless, I'm glad I played The Last of Us 1. I'm glad I played The Last of Us 2. I'm glad that the game challenged me to confront these feelings. And there's lots of little details that I haven't mentioned, right? Things like Ellie having to torture that woman to get information and just all of that stuff. It's just it's a very human game. It's a very painful game, and I'm glad I played it, and I recommend that. I mean, so if you're the kind of person that's squeamish about violence and blood and murder and all those things, then you probably shouldn't play it. But if you can tolerate those things, and you want to be challenged psychologically, emotionally, I recommend playing The Last of Us 1 and 2. Done.